In the heart of Oregon's Willamette Valley, where spring paints the landscape in endless shades of green, a 19-year-old college student vanished without a trace. Brooke Wilberger, bright, beautiful, with a smile that could light up any room, was helping her sister clean apartment complex light fixtures on an ordinary May morning in 2004. Within minutes, she was gone. Left behind were only her sandals, a bucket of soapy water, and a community's shattered sense of security. 4 or 5 agonizing years. Her family clung to hope while investigators pursued thousands of leads that led nowhere. The question echoed through the valley and beyond. What happened to Brooke Wilberger? Her disappearance would become one of Oregon's most haunting mysteries, a case that tested the limits of faith, family, and forensic science. But after years of silence, a single clue would shatter everything. Before I tell you what happened, comment your country and time below. May 24th, 2004 began like any other late spring Monday in Corvallis, Oregon. The Willamette Valley was alive with the vibrant greens of early summer, the sweet scent of lilacs drifting through the warm morning air. At the Oak Park Apartments, located at 301 Northwest 30th Street, maintenance workers were beginning their weekly routine, while college students prepared for final exams at nearby Oregon State University. Brooke Caroline Wilberger, a 19-year-old sophomore at Brigham Young University, had returned home to Corvallis for summer break just days earlier. With her bright blue eyes, infectious smile, and unwavering faith, Brooke embodied the promise of youth. She was the youngest of 5 children raised in a close-knit Mormon family, known for her kindness, intelligence, and deep devotion to those she loved. Friends describe her as someone who never met a stranger and who found joy in life's simplest moment. That morning, Brooke had agreed to help her older sister, Stephanie, with some maintenance tasks at the apartment complex where Stephanie and her husband Justin lived as managers. It wasn't unusual for Brooke, always eager to help, to pitch in with family responsibility. Dressed in a gray Brigham Young University sweatshirt and blue jeans, with her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, Brooke began her day cleaning the outdoor light fixtures around the property. Around 10:30 a.m., Brooke was seen by several residents as she worked near the center of the apartment complex. One neighbor later recalled seeing her kneeling by a light pole, scrubbing away with a sponge, her headphones in her ears as she hummed along to music. Another resident remembered making eye contact with Brooke and exchanging a friendly smile as they passed by. These brief, ordinary encounters would become the last confirmed sightings of Brooke Wilberger alive. By 11 a.m., Stephanie had noticed Brooke's absence. When she went to check on her sister's progress, she found only Brooke's discarded flip-flops, a yellow bucket filled with soapy water, and cleaning supplies left abandoned near a light pole in the parking lot. The scene suggested a sudden interruption. Brooke had simply vanished mid-task. Stephanie's initial concern quickly escalated to alarm when she realized Brooke's cell phone, purse, and car were all still at the apartment. This wasn't a case of a young woman running an errand or losing track of time. Something was terribly wrong. Within 30 minutes, the Corvallis Police Department arrived at Oak Park Apartment. What began as a missing person investigation would soon transform into one of the most extensive searches in Oregon's history. The initial responding officers found no signs of struggle, no blood, no indication of violence, only the unsettling scene of abandoned cleaning supplies and Brooke's simple flip-flops lie discarded on the warm pavement. As news of Brooke's disappearance spread through the tight-knit Corvallis community, hundreds of volunteers descended upon the apartment complex. Family, friends, fellow church members, and concerned citizens organized search party, combing through nearby parks, wooded areas, and along the Willamette River. By nightfall, the search had expanded to include helicopters with thermal imaging capability, dive teams searching local waterways, and bloodhounds tracking potential scent. The Corvallis Police Department, joined by the Oregon State Police and FBI, established a command post at the apartment complex. Investigators methodically interviewed residents, collected potential evidence, and reviewed security footage from nearby businesses. They soon discovered that a surveillance camera from a neighboring business had captured a green van leaving the apartment complex around the time of Brooke's disappearance, a detail that would prove crucial years later. As days turned into weeks, the investigation intensified. Authorities pursued thousands of tips from across the country. Each potential lead was meticulously investigated, yet none brought Brooke home. Some sightings placed her in various cities along the West Coast. Others suggested she had been taken by a religious cult or human trafficking ring. Each theory was explored, each possibility exhausted. Brooke's family, the Wilbergers, maintained an unwavering public presence throughout those early weeks and months. Cammie Wilberger, Brooke's mother, became the face of the family's struggle, her grief palpable yet tempered by remarkable resilience. Greg Wilberger, Brooke's father, balanced his role as a school administrator with the all-consuming search for his youngest child. Their faith in their Mormon community provided both practical support and spiritual sustenance during these dark days. The media coverage was relentless. Local news outlets gave daily updates on the investigation, while national programs like America's Most Wanted featured Brooke's story. Her smiling face appeared on billboards, flyers, and television screens across the country. The image of Brooke, so full of life and promise, became an indelible part of the American consciousness. Another young woman whose disappearance had shattered a community's sense of safety. As summer faded into fall, the massive search efforts gradually scaled back. The command post at Oak Park Apartments was dismantled, though investigators continued to follow leads. For the Wilberger family, the changing seasons marked another painful milestone in their daughter's absence. Brooke's birthday in October came and went without celebration, replaced instead by a quiet family gathering and renewed pleas for information. By the one-year anniversary of Brooke's disappearance, the case had officially grown cold. Despite having interviewed over 3,000 people and followed more than 5,000 leads, investigators were no closer to finding Brooke or identifying her abductor. The community's initial shock had given way to a lingering sense of unease. Someone had taken Brooke in broad daylight, leaving no witnesses, no clear evidence, and no answer. The empty space of the Wilberger family dinner table became a painful symbol of their ongoing loss. Holidays were marked by bittersweet tradition, lighting candles, saying prayers, holding on to hope even as the months accumulated. Yet for all their faith and resilience, an unspoken question hung in the air. Would they ever know what happened to their beloved Brooke? As years passed, the investigation continued quietly in the background of the community's consciousness. New detectives took over the case, fresh eyes reviewing old evidence. Advances in forensic technology offered new possibilities for examining what little physical evidence had been collected. Still, the mystery remained unsolved, and Brooke's whereabouts unknown. In the quiet moments between searches and press conferences, the Wilbergers clung to their memories of Brooke, her laughter, her kindness, her unwavering faith. These memories became both comfort and torment, reminders of all that had been lost on that ordinary May morning in 2004. The case of Brooke Wilberger had become not just a criminal investigation, but a testament to a family's refusal to surrender hope in the face of overwhelming uncertainty. The second year without Brooke brought with it a different kind of pain, the sharp edge of acute grief gradually giving way to the dull, persistent ache of long-term absence. The Wilberger family settled into a rhythm of waiting that would define their lives for years to come. Each morning began with the same silent prayer. Each day ended with the same unanswered question. At the family home in Eugene, about an hour's drive from Corvallis, Brooke's bedroom remained untouched since her last visit. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her textbooks sat on the desk. Her favorite stuffed bear perched on her pillow. This preserved space served as both sanctuary and torment, a physical manifestation of the family's unwavering belief that Brooke would one day return. Cammie Wilberger found herself driving to Corvallis several times a month, drawn inexplicably to the place where her daughter had vanished. She would park near the Oak Park apartment, sometimes sitting for hours in her car, watching students come and go, imagining the ordinary life Brooke had been denied. These pilgrimages became her private ritual, a way to maintain connection with the daughter whose absence had reshaped her entire existence. The Corvallis community, once galvanized by the immediate crisis, gradually returned to normal routine. The posters bearing Brooke's image weathered and faded, replaced by new notices of community events and apartment vacancy. For most residents, the shock had subsided into a background awareness, a cautionary tale told to new students, a reason to walk in pairs after dark, a lingering sadness when passing by the now infamous apartment complex. For investigators, the case had become a persistent, frustrating puzzle. Detective Brian O'Quinn of the Corvallis Police Department, who had been involved since day one, continued to review the evidence periodically, searching for overlooked connection. The green van captured on surveillance footage remained the most promising lead, but despite extensive efforts to identify the vehicle and its driver, the trail had gone cold. As the third anniversary approached, the Wilberger family established the Brooke Wilberger Scholarship at Oregon State University, ensuring their daughter's memory would support other students pursuing their dream. The scholarship announcement was bittersweet, a celebration of Brooke's academic excellence overshadowed by the painful reality that she would never fulfill her own potential. That same year, a breakthrough in forensic science offered renewed hope. The FBI's laboratory had developed new techniques for extracting DNA from minute samples, and investigators sent what little physical evidence they had collected for reanalysis. Among the items tested were the abandoned cleaning supplies and Brooke's discarded flip-flops. The results were disappointing. No usable DNA evidence could be recovered, and the case remained stalled. The fourth year brought an unexpected development when a convicted sex offender in Oregon's prison system claimed to have information about Brooke's disappearance. Investigators conducted multiple interviews, but the inmate's story contained inconsistencies and ultimately proved to be an attempt to gain special treatment. For the Wilbergers, this false hope was particularly devastating, a reminder that their desperation made them vulnerable to manipulation. During this period, the family's faith became both their greatest strength and their most profound challenge. Members of their Mormon congregation provided unwavering support, organizing prayer circles, preparing meals, offering childcare. Yet privately, the Wilbergers struggled with questions that seemed to have no answer. How could a loving God allow such suffering? Why had their prayers for Brooke's safe return gone unanswered? Greg Wilberger, a man of quiet strength and deep faith, found himself wrestling with these spiritual dilemmas. In a rare interview with a local newspaper, he acknowledged the darkness that had settled over their family, but emphasized their continued belief in divine purpose. "We don't understand why this happened," he said, "but we trust that there is meaning in our suffering and that God has not abandoned Brooke or our family." The 5th anniversary of Brooke's disappearance arrived with a mix of emotions: sorrow for the years lost, gratitude for support received, and a diminishing but persistent hope for resolution. The Corvallis Gazette-Times published a special feature on the case, revisiting the initial investigation and highlighting the ongoing impact on the community. The article included updated photographs of the Wilberger family, their faces etched with the passage of time, their eyes reflecting both pain and resilience. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in New Mexico, an unrelated investigation was quietly unfolding that would eventually bring answers to the Wilberger family's long vigil. Joel Patrick Courtney, a 39-year-old man with a history of sexual violence, had been arrested and charged with kidnapping and sexually assaulting a college student in Las Cruces, New Mexico. As authorities built their case against Courtney, they began to uncover a pattern of predatory behavior that would eventually connect him to Brooke's disappearance. Back in Oregon, the changing seasons marked another year without Brooke. Spring returned to the Willamette Valley, bringing with it the painful anniversary of that fateful May morning for the Wilbergers. The passage of time had not healed their wounds, but had rather transformed them, sharp grief giving way to a chronic ache, desperate hope settling into patient endurance. The community's attention had largely shifted to newer crimes and more immediate concern. For most people in Corvallis, Brooke Wilberger had become a tragic memory, a cautionary tale from the past. But for the investigators who refused to let the case go cold, and for the family who refused to let their daughter be forgotten, the search continued, quietly, persistently, against all odds. In the summer of 2009, as the 5th year without Brooke drew to a close, Detective O'Quinn received a call from the FBI. New information had emerged in the New Mexico case of Joel Courtney, information that suggested a possible connection to Brooke's disappearance. The call would mark the beginning of the end of the long silence, the first glimmer of resolution in a case that had haunted Oregon for half a decade. September 2009 began like any other autumn in the Willamette Valley. Students had returned to Oregon State University. The leaves were beginning to turn, and the Wilberger family was preparing for another painful anniversary without their daughter. But behind the scene, investigators were closing in on a breakthrough that would shatter 5 years of silence. The connection between Brooke's case and Joel Courtney began with a routine background check. As investigators in New Mexico prepared for Courtney's trial on kidnapping and sexual assault charges, they discovered he had lived in Oregon at the time of Brooke's disappearance. More significantly, they found that Courtney owned a green minivan in 2004, the same type of vehicle captured on surveillance footage leaving the Oak Park apartments around the time Brooke vanished. This discovery prompted a joint task force between Oregon and New Mexico authority. FBI Special Agent Daniel Clegg, who had worked on Brooke's case since its inception, traveled to Las Cruces to interview Courtney. What he learned would prove to be the missing piece of the puzzle that had eluded investigators for years. Courtney's history of violence against women was extensive. Beginning in his 20s, he had been accused of multiple sexual assault, though many charges had been reduced or dismissed due to technicality. His methods followed a disturbing pattern. He targeted young women, often in broad daylight, using surprise and intimidation to overcome his victim. The similarities between his known crimes and Brooke's disappearance were striking. As investigators dug deeper into Courtney's background, they discovered that he had been living with relatives in Corvallis during the spring of 2004. Former co-workers at a local construction company remembered him as quiet and unassuming, though some recalled unsettling comments he had made about young women in the area. One neighbor remembered seeing a green minivan parked near the relative's home, matching the description of the vehicle captured on surveillance footage. Armed with this information, investigators approached Courtney in prison. Initially, he denied any knowledge of Brooke's disappearance, maintaining his innocence despite mounting evidence. But as investigators presented him with specific details about the case, details that had not been made public, his demeanor began to change. The breakthrough came when investigators mentioned the specific type of cleaning supplies Brooke had been using that day. Courtney's reaction was subtle but noticeable, a slight tightening of his jaw, a momentary glance away. For the experienced interrogators in the room, this small tell was enough to confirm they were on the right track. Over the next several days, under continued questioning, Courtney's story began to unravel. He eventually admitted to being in the area on the day Brooke disappeared, though he claimed to have seen nothing unusual. But when confronted with evidence placing his green minivan at the apartment complex, his denial became increasingly unconvincing. The final breakthrough came when investigators presented Courtney with a photograph of Brooke. As he looked at the smiling face of the 19-year-old college student, something shifted. After hours of evasion, Courtney began to talk, first in fragments, then in a more coherent narrative. What he revealed would confirm the worst fears of the Wilberger family and the Corvallis community. According to Courtney's confession, he had noticed Brooke working alone at the apartment complex and saw an opportunity. He parked his minivan nearby and approached her, initially asking for direction. When Brooke turned to respond, he grabbed her from behind, covered her mouth to prevent her from screaming. He then forced her into his vehicle and drove away from the apartment complex. Courtney described driving to a remote wooded area near Blodgett, Oregon, approximately 20 miles from Corvallis, where he sexually assaulted Brooke. When she resisted and threatened to report him, he admitted to striking her repeatedly with a blunt object, causing fatal injury. He then concealed her body in a densely wooded area, covering it with branches and debris to avoid detection. The details of Courtney's confession matched what little evidence investigators had collected over the years. The remote location he described explained why extensive searches had failed to locate Brooke's remains. The timeline he provided aligned with witness accounts of Brooke's disappearance. Most chillingly, his description of the abduction matched the crime scene: abandoned cleaning supplies, discarded flip-flop, no signs of struggle beyond what would be expected in a sudden surprise attack. On September 19, 2009, based on Courtney's detailed direction, investigators traveled to the wooded area near Blodgett. After several hours of searching, they discovered human remains partially concealed by vegetation and fallen leaves. The condition of the remains reflected the 5 years that had passed, but dental records and DNA analysis confirmed what everyone already feared. These were the remains of Brooke Caroline Wilberger. The news was delivered to the Wilberger family in person by Detective O'Quinn and FBI agent Clegg. In the quiet of the Eugene home, surrounded by family and church leaders, Greg and Cammie Wilberger received the confirmation they both dreaded and desperately sought. Their daughter was dead, but at last she would be coming home. The public announcement of the discovery sent shockwaves through Oregon. For 5 years, Brooke's disappearance had been an open wound in the community, a symbol of vulnerability and injustice. Now, with the identification of her remains and the confession of her killer, the case had shifted from mystery to tragedy, from uncertainty to painful certainty. For investigators, the resolution brought a mixture of emotion: relief that the case was solved, sorrow for the family's loss, and frustration that Courtney had been free to harm others for 5 years after Brooke's murder. The revelation highlighted the importance of continued investigation in cold cases, even when years have passed and hope has dwindled. As Courtney prepared to face justice in Oregon, the community began the difficult process of mourning a loss that was both new and 5 years old. Memorial services were planned. Scholarship funds were renamed in Brooke's honor, and the Oak Park Apartments became a makeshift memorial site, with flowers, candles, and notes left by community members who had never forgotten the bright young woman whose life had been cut short. The revelation of what happened to Brooke Wilberger brought answers, but those answers came with their own pain. The truth was darker than many had imagined, more violent than most had feared. As the community grappled with this new reality, the Wilberger family faced the agonizing task of laying their daughter to rest, 5 years after she had vanished on an ordinary May morning while simply helping her sister clean light fixture. The autumn of 2009 brought a different kind of atmosphere to Corvallis and the surrounding community. The uncertainty that had hung over the region for 5 years had been replaced by a somber clarity. Brooke Wilberger was no longer a missing person. She was a victim of a brutal crime, her life cut short by a man whose history of violence had slipped through the cracks of the justice system. On October 9th, 2009, more than 5 years after her disappearance, Brooke's memorial service was held at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Eugene. The service was both a celebration of her life and an acknowledgement of the community's shared grief. Over 1,000 people filled the chapel and overflow room, a testament to the impact Brooke had made in her 19 years and the profound effect her disappearance had on Oregon. Cammie Wilberger spoke at the service, her voice steady despite the weight of her word. For 5 years, we have hoped and prayed for Brooke's safe return. she said. Today, we mourn the loss of our precious daughter, but we also celebrate the certainty of knowing where she is. Brooke is at peace, and we find comfort in that knowledge. Her words reflected the complex emotions that had defined the family's journey, the tension between grief and relief, between loss and closure. Greg Wilberger followed his wife, speaking of the family forgiveness for Joel Courtney. We have spent many hours in prayer and contemplation, and we have come to a place of forgiveness, he said. Not because his actions were forgivable, they were not, but because holding on to anger and bitterness would only continue to destroy us. Brooke would not want us to live with hatred in our heart. The memorial service marked the beginning of a new chapter for the Wilberger family and the community. The search was over, the mystery solved, but the process of healing had only just begun. In the weeks that followed, the family focused on creating a lasting legacy for Brooke, expanding the scholarship fund, establishing safety programs for college students, and becoming advocates for victims' rights. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings against Joel Courtney moved forward. In November 2009, he was extradited from New Mexico to Oregon to face charges for Brooke's murder. The Benton County District Attorney's Office announced they would seek the death penalty, given the particularly brutal nature of the crime and Courtney's prior history of violence. The case against Courtney was strengthened by his detailed confession, the discovery of Brooke's remains, and forensic evidence linking him to the crime scene. Prosecutors also presented evidence of Courtney's pattern of predatory behavior, including testimony from victims in other states who had been too frightened to come forward until now. As the trial date approached, the community braced itself for the painful details that would emerge during court proceedings. The Wilberger family prepared to face Courtney in court to hear the full account of what happened to their daughter on that May morning in 2004. Their faith continued to sustain them, but even the most devout found themselves questioning how such evil could exist in the world. In a surprising turn of events, Courtney changed his plea in September 2009 in a deal with prosecutors to avoid the death penalty. He pleaded guilty to aggravated murder, first-degree kidnapping, and first-degree sexual assault. The plea agreement meant that the Wilberger family would be spared the pain of a trial, but also meant that Courtney would not face the ultimate punishment for his crime. During his sentencing hearing, Courtney addressed the court and the Wilberger family. "There are no words to express the remorse I feel for what I did to Brooke and to her family," he said, his voice barely audible. "I accept full responsibility for my actions, and I understand that no punishment can ever make up for the loss I have caused." His words rang hollow to many in the courtroom, including the Wilbergers, who saw the statement as a calculated attempt to garner sympathy rather than a genuine expression of remorse. Judge Janet Holcomb sentenced Courtney to life in prison without the possibility of parole. "Your actions have torn apart family and shaken a community to its core," she said. "The only justice available in this case is to ensure that you will never again have the opportunity to harm another innocent person." The sentence brought a measure of closure to the legal proceeding. But for those whose lives have been forever changed by Brooke's murder, true closure remained elusive. In the aftermath of the sentencing, the Wilberger family established the Brooke Wilberger Foundation, dedicated to promoting personal safety awareness and supporting families of missing persons. The foundation's first major initiative was a self-defense program for college students, implemented at campuses across Oregon. "We can't bring Brooke back," Cammie Wilberger said at the foundation's launch event, "but we can honor her memory by helping others stay safe." The Oak Park Apartments, once the scene of the investigation, became a place of remembrance. A memorial garden was planted near the spot where Brooke had been working, with a plaque bearing her name and a simple inscription, "In loving memory of Brooke Caroline Wilberger, whose light continues to shine in our heart." The garden became a quiet place of reflection for students and community members, a living tribute to a life cut short. The impact of Brooke's case extended beyond Oregon. The investigation highlighted the importance of interagency cooperation in solving violent crime, leading to improved communication between law enforcement agencies across state lines. The case also underscored the need for better tracking of convicted sex offenders, as Courtney had moved between states without adequate supervision. 5 years after Brooke's disappearance, the Corvallis community had been transformed. The initial fear and uncertainty had given way to a heightened awareness of personal safety, particularly among college students. The Brooke Alert system, modeled after the Amber Alert for missing children, was implemented at Oregon State University, providing rapid notification when students were reported missing. For the Wilberger family, life had settled into a new normal, one that included advocacy work, public speaking, and continued involvement with the foundation established in Brooke's name. Their other children had grown up in the shadow of this tragedy, each finding their own way to honor their sister's memory while moving forward with their lives. In the spring of 2014, on the 10th anniversary of Brooke's disappearance, the community gathered once again at the Memorial Garden. The event was both solemn and hopeful, a recognition of how far the community had come in healing, and an acknowledgement that some wounds never fully closed. Greg and Cammie Wilberger, now grandparents, spoke of their continued faith and their commitment to turning their personal tragedy into something positive for others. The pain of losing Brooke never goes away, Cammie told the gathered crowd, but we've learned to carry that pain with purpose. Brooke's life had meaning, and her death has meaning too. It has brought us together as a community, made us more vigilant in protecting our children, and reminded us to cherish every moment we have with those we love. The case of Brooke Wilberger became a case study in criminal justice class, an example of how persistence and advances in forensic science can solve even the most challenging cold cases. Investigators who had worked on the case frequently spoke at law enforcement conferences, sharing lessons learned and emphasizing the importance of never giving up on victims, no matter how much time has passed. In the prison where Joel Courtney is serving his life sentence, he has become something of a pariah even among the incarcerated population. His crimes against Brooke Wilberger, particularly their brutal nature, have made him a target of violence from other inmates. He spends his days in isolation, a stark contrast to the vibrant life he extinguished on that May morning in 2004. The Wilberger family continues to receive letters from people across the country whose lives have been touched by Brooke's story. Some are from families of other missing persons who have found hope in the Wilbergers' perseverance. Others are from young women who have taken self-defense classes or become more aware of their surroundings because of what happened to Brooke. As seasons continue to change in the Willamette Valley, the Memorial Garden at Oak Park Apartments remains a constant, a quiet space of reflection in a bustling college town. Students who never knew Brooke Wilberger stopped to read the plaque, to sit for a moment among the flowers, to remember a young woman whose life ended before it had truly begun. The investigation into Brooke's murder has concluded, the legal proceedings have ended, and the media attention has faded. But for those who knew her, for those who searched for her, for those who never gave up hope, Brooke Wilberger remains present, a reminder of both the darkness that exists in the world and the light that continues to shine even in the face of overwhelming tragedy. This case reminds us that justice may come late, but it never vanishes. It reminds us that the bonds of family and community can withstand even the most devastating blows. And it reminds us that every life, no matter how briefly lived, leaves an indelible mark on the world. Brooke Caroline Wilberger's 19 years on earth mattered, not just to those who loved her, but to an entire community that was transformed by her absence and inspired by her memory. In the end, perhaps it is the most fitting legacy for a young woman who brought so much light to the world, that even in her absence, she continues to illuminate the darkness, guide others towards safety, and remind us all to cherish every precious moment we have with those we love.